Snap fail. Awesome.
Aren't we funny?
Today we're discussing, let's try that again. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, okay, action.
I guess we'll start then. Yeah, what episode is this? 6.
It's a good thing we're professionals here.
For God's sake. Okay.
What are you laughing at?
Wow.
Good. That's what his name is.
Hi everybody and welcome to episode 12 of Nights at the Round Table. Today we're discussing the 1979 movie Alien. This is a movie about the crew of the Deep Space Nostromo, which is a transport tug, essentially, who encounter a signal coming from a planetoid and are not sent, obligated to go investigate it, and then shit happens. So we're going to start with overall impressions of the movie. I'm going to start with Rob because it should be amusing.
Okay, well, it needs to be said that when we drew Alien out of the bowl a couple weeks ago, I was like totally stoked for this, and I was like, oh god, yes, I want to be on this panel. And then I rewatched it, and I quickly realized that it was the second Aliens movie that I really loved, and the first one I found really slow. And I was like, oh god. And so I made a whole bunch of notes about it, and a lot of them are things that I wasn't such a big fan of, or things how it did not age very well in my opinion. But we'll get into that in a second.
Okay.
79, around that time area, you think about other movies like Jaws, and the pacing of a movie like this. It is slower and more drawn out. It harks back to a Hitchcockian era where you need to involve the audience more into it and to draw out the suspense instead of just plunging in, surprise, action, boom, ah! Much like a lot of modern cinematic movies are these days. I thought it, basically at its most fundamental level, what Alien is meant to be, I thought, was to be a movie about things that can just jump out of the dark and kill you. You know, people are afraid of snakes, spiders, tarantulas, these little things. Why?
Now xenomorphs.
Xenomorphs, yes, exactly. Why? Because you don't expect them, you don't see them coming, because they just appear, and that is the fundamentally where this movie is drawing from, is from the dark reaches of our imaginations.
Okay, I really liked this movie. Yes, it was a lot slower. The second Aliens is what I remember most, and I know I loved that movie. But I liked this one as well. It was, yes, not as much action as I was anticipating, but I still, for someone who doesn't like being terrified all the time, the suspense was amazing. And despite there not being a ton of action, I really got into the movie really quickly, so I think it was pretty good. What specifically did you have issues with?
Well, actually, the first thing that I noticed was kind of a ha-ha thing and not something that I actually had an issue with. So when they have the original scene where they're introducing the Nostromo, and they do this pan shot of it, I'm like, wow, this looks like one of the Star Wars ships. And I really thought about it, and I'm like, okay, you know what, it's close enough to the same time period. They're very similar. I'm like, I wonder if any of the Star Destroyers were built by the same company. And I was like, that's really funny.
Were they? Yeah.
I don't know, but it looked very, very similar. I'm sure if you compared the two pieces of footage, yeah.
Okay.
That's
fair
cool.
enough. What caught me by surprise was the presence of a cat.
And it lived.
What was it?
Lived.
I was like, if the cat does not make it out alive, I am not. This is wrong. The first thing I did when that movie finished was I went and found one of our cats and I gave him a big cuddle and I'm like, I would never leave you behind, God. I liked that the cat lived.
Well, it's important because usually when you see a cat in a movie, right, the cat is dead. Like right off the bat.
Oh, pets.
Dead. The dog survives. The dogs always survive.
Didn't in Terminator.
I like Terminator. And cat on the spaceship was probably not a very good plan, but they built that into the script. There was a couple times where they're hunting the aliens, and all of a sudden something moves, and they're like, yeah! They're like, oh, it's the fucking cat. But so the cat was actually a useful piece as well for suspense.
Also, it told you if an alien was nearby, because it was always hissing if there was an alien nearby. But it was cuddly as all hell if there was no alien.
Important point, viewers. Cats like to survive. If you see the cat running the fuck the other way, there's an alien coming. Dogs would be like, will you be my friend?
No, it depends on the dog.
There's no evidence to support that.
Depends if the alien has a ball.
Yeah. So we make that into a t-shirt.
Crafty bastard.
As throwing a ball for a puppy.
Yeah, sitting there on the ship, this yo-yo, walks the dog down the corridor. You're like, what the fuck is that? Oh shit!
I have to say, I found the music was very 70s, but never crossed over into the cheesy side, the way that 80s music tends to, 80s scores. You have all the flutes and the recorders and stuff that you hear a lot of in the 70s music. It was in this, but it never felt cheesy or outdated. I think that's pretty impressive.
On the music score, it was written by Jerry Goldsmith, who
was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's done, let's see, from a long list: Twilight Zone, Planet of the Apes, Patton, Star Trek, Gremlins, Rambo.
Star Trek.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 of the movies.
Okay.
He's got a credits list like this. Okay, he's done a lot of stuff. But his the pacing of this movie is slower, and the music lends to that too. Where he knows that you don't have to have a musical cinematic piece for every single moment. There are points in the movie where there's silence. All you hear is the clanking of chains or the rain or whatever, and coming down. Or the music is a kind of a metallic chattering in the background to kind of amplify that non-organic sensation, I will say. His styling for the music really fitted Alien, I think.
It did. It fit very well. And I never once laughed at it, which I have done in other movies.
Well, no, let's see though. Rob, what is your feeling on the music? Do you disagree with this?
No, I think you're pretty correct about that, because out of all the little nitpicky details I had with the movie, the music was not one of them. I found that it fit in very well. It worked very well. If we're going to criticize something on the sound, it's got to be the 1970s computers. But let's be honest, it was filmed in the 70s, so how much can we really nitpick on that? Telling them at the time that in the future computers won't make any sound at all. They were like, what?
Yep.
Yeah, so what can you do?
Yeah, the computers make me smile. All the graphics, etc., were very sort of analog looking.
Vic 20.
Yeah, but that said, I also liked it because it lent a real sort of gritty feeling to the movie, like all the wires and the black and the really crappy graphics made it feel like something darker and grittier than I think if it was all flash, which I quite liked.
One of the main elements to Alien then, and not necessarily to the plot, but to the plot or movie as a whole that I wanted to bring out is the contrast that the movies at this point in time, like Alien and Jaws and other movies here, compared to, I don't know, I'll just Armageddon or more modern flicks. How things have separated and compared. You tell your kids if you want dessert, you have to eat dinner first, and so you don't just jump into the good parts like a lot of modern flicks do. You have to bring out the crew and their nuances and the depth of the story before you can get into exciting, fun parts, because you're drawn more into the characters and the story itself before all this crap happens. In a lot of the modern movies, it's all flash and bang and no story. And that's a very stark contrast with movies then and movies now.
I really, really, really liked that it didn't rely on some of the horror tropes that seem to permeate all the horror movies ever. Like, for example, the first one to die was Not the Black Man. That was nice. That was very nice.
He made it quite a way through.
He made it quite a way through. I approve. Also, and I love Ripley's character. She's kick-ass. She really is.
Especially love that. What about the quarantine procedures? And they're like, overruled! And she's like, you guys are gonna regret this.
Not for long.
There are a few things about Ripley that I really enjoyed, and about the how the character was written into this as well. We expect certain things with movies these days, but 30 years ago, 35 years ago, 79.
Oh my god,
Okay.
really? Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
I was born yesterday. I grew up real fast.
But, okay, one, you have a woman that's not playing a damsel in distress. That is, okay, all these characters, none of them are adventurers or military or whatever. They're not hardened, for all this stuff. They're a commercial company. So we accept that. We accept that they're not hardened, and you're not a military unit being sent in like in Alien 2 or in Aliens. But Sigourney Weaver, she plays a character that has a certain mental fortitude to her, which is not was not a common thing at that time period. But also too, she was a surviving character. Again, a female lead being a surviving character in a film as well, which I think for the time, these are a couple of very nice, maybe not firsts, but at least segues in for female leads to in the movie industry to be shown and to be written in such a major movie as Alien.
It was definitely hugely progressive for its time.
Absolutely.
And I like that you couldn't tell who was the major character when the movie first started, because it all just seemed so like everybody had their place, and then you gradually, Ripley made her way up to, oh yeah, okay, so she's the one we need to watch. I like that.
You were really sort of leaning towards Tom Skerritt's character, and then you're like, oh wait, no, Ripley's the smart one. So yeah.
Some really big names in this movie that made me stop. I had seen Alien before, but I didn't remember these big names, and then John Hurt and Ian Holm. And I was looking at them and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. They really, Ollivander aboard the Nostromo. Bilbo. It was awesome, and they looked so young too. I'm like, you can tell who they were, but like the minute I saw, oh look, John Hurt. Oh look, there's Ian Holm.
Yep.
But Jesus.
That one had me going for a while. I was staring at him and I'm like, I know that face, I know he's really young now, who is that? And I'm like,
Bilbo.
It's also worth mentioning that it's not a young cast.
No, it's not.
Yeah, the youngest person on set was Sigourney Weaver, and she was 29 when it was made.
Was she?
Yeah.
I should have gone for 29.
Yeah, and Veronica Cartwright.
Well, 'cause it's ancient.
At 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
But which again lends to a certain realism with this too. You're going to have older experienced crew that are going to be leading, that are going to be commanding the ship in that. So, nice. I mentioned before about leaning back towards the Hitchcockian era, and a quote that he has always been used from is, or has been taken from him is, two people talking for 5 minutes while sitting on a table, bomb goes off, surprise. Gee, that sounds like a modern day flick, okay? But if you show the bomb under the table before the conversation starts, you got 5 minutes of suspense. And that's kind of been a staple led to suspense movies that he has made and others have tried to emulate in the future. And that's an aspect that I find that this movie draws from as well, to keep you seated there and keep you watching during the quieter moments, during the slower moments where it's not action.
Yeah, because when they brought, the character back on the ship, once they realized that, he had the face suckered. And I actually believe that that's what they were called. It's something very similar to that. But he's got this alien stuck to his face, and they go through easily 10 to 15 minutes of doing not much while this alien creature is sucking on their friend's face. And that play during that time, like you were saying, was actually kind of really important to the film. I did have one little issue about how that resolved. Once they actually let the audience know that the thing has left the guy's face, 3 of them go into the room. And they go into the room and they have no protective equipment. They didn't even try to improvise protective equipment. Because at some point, the masks that they were wearing for the autopsies and stuff, they left that aside. They had no equipment with them to try to capture this thing. So they walked in completely unarmed and unprepared. And they left the door open behind them.
Yeah,
and I went back in the movie and I was like, how long did they leave the door open? And it was actually 1 minute and 15 seconds before one of them went, oh shit, close the door. And at that point I was like, okay, you already know that this alien's out here, you've already broken your quarantine. I think that shutting that door so it doesn't get out into the rest of the ship would have been a top priority, right?
That's a great example of how the crew is completely out of their element.
Yeah, it could be.
That door was left open on purpose by the director.
Yeah, well, I can see how that would happen, but as an audience member watching with no training whatsoever, I'd be like, close the fucking door. Close the fucking door.
Especially since one of those characters was Sigourney Weaver's character, and we had already seen Ripley being like, but the quarantine, So, yeah, that was a problem.
Yeah, that did jump out at me. Well, all the mistakes jumped out at me, but even still, I don't know. Like,
so you admit that there was a ton of mistakes now?
No. There were mistakes that the characters made. I don't believe it was a mistake with the filming or the film. Like, not waiting to decipher the signal before you go investigate. That was a big one for me. I'm like, don't you think it would have been wiser to decipher the signal before you sent out the search team? Just so you know that it was a warning before you arrive at the alien ship.
So that went all right off to human nature, though. Because we're out there. Admittedly, they didn't want to be exploring.
Everything that happened in the ship, the curiosity, I will put to human nature. But not waiting until, if you're going to decipher the signal anyway, not waiting until it was deciphered. I'm like, really, guys?
I wouldn't wait for the signal. I'd be like Cowboy Factor. I'd be like, let's get out there and explore some shit. Yeah.
Excellent. So you're the first person dead.
It's possible. She might have me pegged there.
I would wait. If you're going to do it anyway, just wait so that you know if there's anything that you need to watch out for.
Speaking of the exploration, he mentioned their shipping contract, because this is a commercial vessel. And when they're sitting around the table and they're being like, yeah, no, I don't care about the signal. Let's go on about our business. We're not being paid to do this. And they actually point out, well, it's in your contract that if we come across any signals, we have to go out and explore it. And all the guys are like, oh my God, why? So that was a very important part in the film where, they showed that.
Well, it certainly explains why they touched down. Because I would be with the guys who are like, what? Not our business. Nope. Giant nope fish. Yeah, no.
We've talked about the cast a bit, and Ian Holm and John Hurt, and some of the names that are in here. Jerry Goldsmith doing the score, and again, this done in '79. These people have moved on to other bigger movies. It's made Sigourney Weaver's career. I was looking to okay, this is a movie. Who's the screenwriter? So I took a look at that, and the guy's name is Dan O'Bannon. He's done a ton of movies, but a few of the movies he's done, the one previous to this was his second movie, as near as I could see, was Dark Star. done Heavy Metal, he's done Life Force, and he's done Total Recall as well.
So he's a sci-fi guy.
Yeah, he's done a lot of script writing for sci-fi.
No.
He's done other stuff too, but that seems to maybe be the main bulk of it. So, you know, he seems to have a feel for that niche.
I have to point out that I really, really, really liked that you didn't really see the alien much at all, except for a few extreme close-ups. And then at the very end, which actually we were discussing earlier, that could have done without because then you could tell it was a dude in a suit. But up until then, it was really awesome because you couldn't really see the thing that you were supposed to be afraid of. And when your imagination is allowed to fill in the gaps like that, it can do more than any film would ever do. And so it made it 1,000 times scarier to not see the alien as much. I enjoyed that.
I was trying to get a screenshot of it, just so we could, like, you know, be like, people talking, alien! But it was actually really hard to get a clean screenshot.
Yeah.
They did a really good job of not telegraphing when the alien's going to be and not showing it directly and in obvious manners. So, yeah, I'm down with that.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, there's a couple points like where he's coming through and you know that rain's coming down, the water's coming down, and takes off his hands, enjoying that or whatever. Typical plot line says he gets attacked then. He didn't get attacked then, which is nice to see it not be, you know, what you expect in most films.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, it didn't rely on the tropes that you see so often in horror these days, which made it really good because it was less predictable and then less eye-rolly. No, yes, of course that person died then. Right. No, don't run into the basement. Oh, whatever. Right.
Run right into the guy's open
exactly,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
And there were a number of points in the movie that were never actually answered to.
You tell, because I was so involved in the movie that I couldn't pick out anything.
Okay. Well, like for example, the movie Prometheus, also done by Ridley Scott, of course, is supposed to be a precursor to Alien. But if you watch Alien, okay, they touch down to investigate things. Okay, the alien is what we're investigating. Where did that ship come from?
The alien ship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? The guy that has the face sucker that's dead there in the seat, you don't actually see what kind of an alien it is.
No.
Where's that species from? These questions are never answered in this. Do they know of other species at all? Not answered either. But
yeah, there wasn't integral to the plot. I don't think it needed answering.
they investigated the ship.
Well, yeah, but what they got was one guy which looked like he was at a gun with a burst open chest. That tells you everything that you need to know about what's coming.
Not a happy ending.
You don't need to know about what kind of alien it was or where it was from or how the ship landed. Just that.
That's a really GTFO now moment.
Yeah, exactly.
You see that, you're like,
it's
we're
just
done
the first-
exploring.
Okay, yeah, we're done. Let's get some military folk in here.
Okay, so how did you guys feel about the science officer turning out to be a robot?
I had no particular emotion about that. I'm like, oh yes, of course it is.
When that happened, I was expecting some sort of, political intrigue coming from that. There was definitely something that they were building up to. And when he turned out to be a robot, for me it was a real non sequitur, and I was like, what? Okay. Really?
If you rewatch the film, watch him, and it makes complete sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because his behavior the whole time
makes sense when you find out that he's a robot. He's been programmed specifically for the retrieval of the specimen.
In retrospect, because I did rewatch it a couple times, and I was like, okay, so they were telegraphing it a little bit, but it still felt a little disjointed here.
I suppose I can see that. I can see where it fell off as far as storyline goes. I also didn't really find that it was overly obtuse to the storyline. You're talking about you're on a spaceship, gods know however far away. Okay, you have a robot. Okay, you kind of expect that in most sci-fi movies.
No, I do agree. It it wouldn't have made a difference if he was a robot or not. If he was just some guy who was obeying very strict orders from his employers that goes above and beyond what the rest of the crew knew, it wouldn't have mattered if he was a robot. But that they made him a robot, I was just like, man, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The way I sort of rationalized the robot thing was they spent a lot of time playing up, the captain querying Mother, their shipboard computer. So, and the computer was giving them no information whatsoever. So having the robot there too, it became very obvious that all of the tech and the company that was funding this was completely behind the scenes, not helping them, and in fact hanging them out to dry. And once they revealed that, with Sigourney Weaver's character being like, yeah, we just found out, crap, we're all fodder,
I liked her reaction to it.
Yeah.
I liked the fact that she flipped her lid for a moment before coming back into herself and getting shit done. Because that would be me. That would be completely, I would just lose everything for about 5 minutes before I figure out what the hell I do next.
It was also very important for Ripley's character because through most of the movie, she's, the smart one. She's making good decisions. It was important to see her with that opportunity for humanity for a second, just to flip her lid and be like, okay, now I'm back under control, let's do this.
Yeah.
So
Actually, I have to say, with exception of the science, head of science dude, without Bill Burr, the humanity in all of the characters was really, really, really well done. They did shit, but they were terrified, and then the one girl who was so terrified she couldn't even... I know people who would be like that. They're not on my zombie survival team. But I know people who would be like, and then they would die because they were just standing there going, I don't panic. So...
But if you are, contracting out a ship to go out and, bring some aliens back, those people who are excellent fodder are exactly the kind of people you'd want to hire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially if you're not expecting any of the crew back. If they're just damaged, collateral damage, then yeah. Alright, does anybody want to say anything else before we go to the ratings?
I don't think so.
No? Okay, so if you're going to give it out of 5 stars?
I rather did like the movie, but there's just some things I looked a little bit more for. Perhaps it's due to the age, I'm not sure, but I'd likely give it about 4. There's just a little bit more I was wanting from it that just didn't quite own up to.
I'm going to offend people now. I remembered it as being a 4. When I rewatched it, I threw it more out of 2. So I'm going to conglomerate and put it out of 3.
On a 3? Okay, I was going to go 4 again. It was a really good movie, lots of suspense, but I didn't have the emotional connection to the characters that made me care whether they died or not. Which means it wasn't quite as perfect as it could have been, but I really enjoyed it, and I reckon people ought to watch it because it was a good film. So 4. All right. Do you want to pick the next one?
Sure.
Oh, yes, I love this movie. The Abyss. We'll be watching that, the director's cut though, not the theatrical.
Not the crappy cut.
Yeah, the director's cut of The Abyss, 1989. So we will be reviewing that in 2 weeks from now. Next week we'll be reviewing the book Dune, which is one of my favorite sci-fi books. So do stay tuned for that. If you want to join in the conversation, leave a comment down below or tweet us on Facebook, #NATRT. And we will see you next week. Bye!